to say, hey, I had built this decision in my head that I wanted to be a MD my entire life, but I actually don't want to do that. I don't really find that that's something that's going to be fulfilling to me, but I do love being in the lab. I love learning about I love learning about the foundational science in class and then go to the lab and then I'm actually doing it. I have a deeper understanding of really what's occurring. So, you know, the biggest transfer was, like I said, me being honest with myself. And after being honest with myself, then, I was off to the races.
Welcome back to another episode of Kel's Big Little World. For our new listeners over on this channel, I'm Kel, and I interview guests from all over the world to explore their beliefs, careers, and day-to-day life, all to reveal that we're united in something greater, a shared journey through this big little world we call home. Today, we'll be talking to a Ph.D. candidate who has dedicated his entire educational experience to uncovering much-needed answers about viruses that impact our society. Y.B. Yeats once said, "Education is not the filling of a bucket, but the lighting of a fire." This student has used his education to explore medicine and sciences on a global level to solve deep-rooted issues in our society. With that being said, let's welcome our upcoming guest, Adam Hafner. Adam Hafner is currently a Ph.D. student at the University of Michigan's Department of Microbiology and Immunology. He recently graduated Michigan State University with a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry and Molecular Biology as an Honors College member and a Dean's Honors List for 7 semesters. Mr. Hafner has done global volunteering in Honduras to give medical and dental care to impoverished populations. In addition, he has done shadowing work in oncology, pathology, and a variety of specialties. Soon to be, Dr. Adam Hafner has made strides in science, technology, engineering, and math field with the hope to study viruses that impact our society. So hello, how are you doing today?
Very good, very good. Thank you for having me. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day to interview me.
Of course. So as far as questions, I want to start at the beginning. Where are you from?
I am from Detroit, Michigan. Have lived there my entire life. I see you went to Cass Tech. My parents actually also met at Cass Tech in the 80s. So, we are a very East Side Detroit family.
Yes. So you attended Grosse Pointe High School, and throughout your education, were
Yep.
you always good at math and science?
Not math per se. Definitely, to be honest, my strongest suit in high school was history. I really enjoyed history. Liked history, liked learning how, historical battles and things worked. Also liked science, was good at it. Necessarily, it wasn't my, strong suit. It really wasn't until I got to college when I was like, oh, wait, I'm pretty good at science. I can make a career out of this kind of a thing.
So going into college, what did you want to do career-wise?
So going into college, I wanted to be a physician, so an MD. I think I wanted to be either an internal medicine doctor or a urologist. So yeah, I was definitely in like the pre-med, route because I think anyone who is good at science goes to college thinking, yeah, I'll be a doctor. That's kind of how that works out. Obviously, things changed, but yeah, doctor was definitely what I was interested in for sure.
And why did you choose to go to Michigan State?
Michigan State. I have to be frank with you. I didn't get into Michigan, so I went to Michigan State. um, uh, yeah, that's kind of it, to be honest with you.
Describe your undergrad experience. I know you were, a STEM student, so could you have the balance of, going to parties and going to school, or is it mainly one or the other?
Okay, so to be honest with you, I tell people that like not going to Michigan was one of the best things that happened to me, because went to Michigan State, got an amazing education, had an amazing time, and I also had a ton of fun. I was the kind of student who I worked hard in school and I partied hard outside of school. Every welcome week party I was at, tailgates I was at, parties I was at, but at the same time I was in the library, all day, most of the night studying. I was making sure my grades were taken care of. I didn't want my mom and dad calling to cuss me out if I did bad on the exam. Here I was, 20, 21 years old, and my parents were still asking me, hey, what did you get on that exam? Hey, how are your grades doing? So yeah, partied hard, but I always make sure not to forget the real reason I was there, which was to get an education, build my CV, make sure that after undergrad, I had the tools and things required to set myself up for the next step.
What was one of your hardest classes?
Ooh, the hardest class I ever took at Michigan State, two hardest classes actually. First was 400 level biochemistry and molecular biology. So when you go to college, your junior year is when you start taking your like actual major classes. And so 400 level is like kind of like the highest level you can have as undergrad. So we were taking a very advanced molecular biology and biochemistry course. That was very hard. I studied very hard for that all the time. And then not organic chemistry, analytical chemistry was also very hard. I actually had to take that class twice because the first time I started bombing the exams and I was like, well, I don't want this on my record, so I dropped the class and it wouldn't be on my record. And then I took it a second time and did really well in it. But yeah, so I would say definitely those higher level STEM classes were very, very challenging.
What things helped you get through classes like that?
To be honest, the most thing is to not be afraid to ask for help. You know, to go to the professor, go to the TA, go to other classmates and be like, "Hey, I didn't understand this. How did you do it? How did you understand it?" Because, once you get to those higher classes, everybody's smart. You're not going to be like, oh, they're dumb. Everyone is smart. And everyone is struggling because it is hard. So, I would say, please say forming study groups. One of my best friends, we actually met at a party, but we also studied 24/7 together. So, forming those study groups, going to TAs, going to professors, just doing everything I can to get help, but also putting the work in personally to, make sure that they're helping me, but they're not telling me how to do it. Like I still need to, connect the dots and things like that. So just a lot of hard work, to be honest with you.
With Michigan State being a predominantly white institution and even your major lacking people of color, how did you find that click in those relationships?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very good. So even the high school I went to was a predominantly white high school. Actually, all the schools I've always gone to have been predominantly white, to be honest with you. So I would say the main thing is to like find that community. So at Michigan State, I was a part of an amazing program called the Charles Drew Science Scholars, which is a science program specifically designed for minorities. So because of me being in that program, while I was in a predominantly white institution, I was kind of in a very small, tight-knit community of Black and brown individuals. So, most of all my friends were Black, or brown. And, even in like the classes that were, I would be the only Black guy in the class, still finding that community and finding people who I can work and gel with, to get through the hard times.
What were some of the significant experiences or programs that you were in at Michigan State?
Okay, so like I said, I was in the Drew program, Charles Drew Science Scholars, and because of that, I also worked for them as a tutor. So I worked as a tutor for different chemistry classes, different math classes. I did that for a few years. Worked as a tutor for another program, the ESA program, which is I think it's an engineering program, a really good bridge program. Then I worked as an undergraduate learning assistant, which is basically a TA, but at the undergraduate level. So I TA'd for a few classes. Um, I was a part of something called Global Brigades, which is where I went to Honduras and did like volunteer work. Um, what else did I do? I was part of the honors college. So being a part of the honors college, I was able to not have to take a lot of prerequisite courses. So I could just jump into the course and, get to it. So yeah, mostly just everything I was involved in was geared towards a goal of if I'm going to be involved in it, I want to put it on my CV. I want to do something to make me stand out. And after getting one major thing, I was very heavily involved in undergraduate research. I worked in a lab for 2 years in the Department of Pharmacology and Toxicology. I studied a parasite for 1 year in the Department of Integrative Biology. So, again, everything I was involved in, while I enjoyed it at times, it was all geared towards, building that CV, learning these skills to make myself a very marketable scientist after undergrad.
Those global brigades, you were able to travel to Honduras. How was that
Yep.
experience?
At the time I liked it. I'm not a doctor now, so I guess I didn't have like this life-changing experience. But it was really cool. I would tell any prospective undergraduate, go see the world. That was one of the biggest things I tried to do a lot in undergrad was travel. I went to Amsterdam, I went to Seattle, I went to Honduras. And if you're gonna go see the world, if it's gonna be on vacation, great. But if you can also go see the world while doing things to build your resume. So there are numerous programs like the one I was in that you could go do shadowing as a doctor or MD. Or there's also research internships if you want to be, an actual scientist in the lab. There are internships you can do in Scotland, London, other places. But yeah, definitely take advantage of studying abroad. I mean, go see the world. There's more of the world than just Detroit.
So with this transition from, wanting to be an MD to going into to a different type of science, where
Mhm.
did that switch occur?
So the switch came after around junior year, right before COVID. The switch happened. I went to Honduras and I was like, this didn't give me the drive that I thought it would have given me to then go down the MD route. Fortunately, maybe my anxious self, again, everything I was doing was for building that CV to be quickly transferred over to being a researcher. So there was no break. There was no like, oh, I need to rebuild all my CV, all my classes could switch over, all of my I intentionally majored in biochemistry because if I didn't go to medical school, I can still go do so much with a biochemistry and molecular biology degree. So there was no major transfer there. There was no major transfer with my extracurriculars. Everything looked good on my resume. Even my internships also still, were able to transfer over. So really, it was just kind of me making that decision for myself to say, hey, I had built this decision in my head that I wanted to be a MD my entire life, but I actually don't want to do that. I don't really find that that's something that's going to be fulfilling to me, but I do love being in the lab. I love learning about I love learning about the foundational science in class and then go to the lab and then I'm actually doing it. I have a deeper understanding of really what's occurring. So, you know, the biggest transfer was, like I said, me being honest with myself. And after being honest with myself, then, I was off to the races.
So what does being in the lab actually look like? Does it look like what we see on TV and in movies?
That's a great question. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. Yeah, being in the lab is, I think sometimes it's like what you see on TV, but sometimes it's not. Science moves very slow. So yeah, there are days when I have, infections, experiments, growing cells, feeding cells, working furiously for, 10 hours a day. And then there are other days when I'm just reading papers, I'm writing and I'm there for 4 hours, so it really is, there's ups and downs kind of. But it's a lot of fun, I will say, but what it looks like on the day to day is kind of, I would say, like a regular work day, to be honest.
In 2020, you did some impressive research with a type of leukemia. How was that experience working in pathology?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. That was really cool. That was really cool. So unfortunately, because of COVID, I was not able to like necessarily be in the lab. I was doing a lot of like reading, and I wrote a review, and learned a lot about acute myeloid leukemia. I thought that it was very interesting. It showed me that I enjoy cancer metabolism. However, I would rather focus on viruses, and that's kind of what landed me studying the role that metabolism plays in viral infections.
Where did that passion or even interest come for when studying viruses and different types of things?
Yeah, definitely. So to be honest, I think that it has come from a fascination with viruses because, even before COVID, I was always fascinated how not only viruses are anatomically impressive, but the social aspects that come with viral infections as well. For example, if we take COVID, world was shut down. People of Asian descent, there were hate against them based on racial actions, and so it was this virus that the virus doesn't know that it's causing all this. The virus is just replicating, but we're the ones who are trying to catch up to the virus, understand what they're doing. There's also social aspects that are affecting how we deal with the virus. Even if we won't even get into the vaccine. But yeah, no, virus is very, very fascinating. And I think one reason I was very interested in getting a PhD was it was the first time where someone said, "Hey, I'm going to allow you to research what you would like. You are going to be the independent scientist, learning about what you want to. You're going to make the project work. Go for it." And I think that told me like, well, I'm very interested in metabolism, very interested in viruses. Let's combine the two and see where it takes us. And that's where I am today.
What's one of the most surprising things you found out about viruses, or just infections in general?
Oh, so one thing I did not know is that the specific virus I studied, norovirus, and other viruses in general, when they infect your cells, they will reprogram specific pathways to allow for more nutrients available for them to selfishly steal to replicate. So if we take an uninfected cell and an infected cell, the infected cell is going to look vastly different than the uninfected cell. And how the virus is able to reprogram that infected cell, we don't know. So that's kind of really what my PhD thesis is really focusing on.
So speaking of, in 2021, you enter U of M's PhD
Mhm.
program.
Yep.
What led you to make that decision, which cost a lot of money? Like, this is what I want to do.
So one thing I want to dispel, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but I'll say it now. You do not have to pay tuition when you get a PhD. So that was one thing that really surprised me because I was always under the influence. Oh my God, I got to go into all these loans, pay for graduate school. Undergrad was already expensive enough. We're looking at upwards of $100,000, but graduate school is going to be even more because you're getting a graduate degree. But then as I was learning more about the application process, you actually do not pay tuition as a graduate student. I don't pay tuition. I actually get paid. The university, I'm on a training grant from the NIH, and they are paying me to do research. They take care of my health care, take care of my benefits, take care of my tuition, also just pay me to live. And so I think that is one thing that a lot of people don't know about, is that if you get into a PhD program, it truly is like having a job. You're not paying, I'm not paying the University of Michigan to be there. But the reason why I chose Michigan was one, I, didn't really want to go out of state per se. I didn't really want to go too far from my family. They're all centered in Detroit. I wanted to be near my support network through this very stressful thing called a PhD. Um, and in the state of Michigan, they're the top school in the state of Michigan, and they have one of the most robust research programs on the entire planet. So I thought, why go 20,000, 2,500 miles across the country when I can go 10 miles, 90 miles down the street and be, at my father's alma mater, my brother's alma mater, and, get the best education possible under one of some of the most, fascinating and best researchers out there. So that's kind of why I chose Michigan. Um, and I really haven't regretted my decision since.
What are your responsibilities as a PhD candidate?
So you, as a PhD candidate, I had to have a really, really, really big test last year around this time. Basically, think about a final exam over everything you learned over the last year. And so it's basically your checkpoint exams. And so being a PhD student, yes, you got to go to class, you got to go to the lab, that's your first year, that's expected. But after your first year, I had to take a very big test, and it was an oral examination in front of three scientists who were pillars in three different fields: immunology, virology, and bacteriology. So viruses, the immune system, and bacteria. And so for 2 hours, they just asked me as many questions they could think about, and I have to answer, draw on the board, and stuff like that. And so that was a really big thing that a lot of PhD students have to go through, because if you don't pass the test, you don't remain in the program. So it's like very cut and dry. I mean, you have a chance to retake it, but if you continue not passing the test, you're kicked out. So the main thing is those big checkpoints to pass. Because once I passed it, then I became a PhD candidate. But as I guess the day-to-day things would just be, go to the lab and read as much as possible, perform experiments, collect data, and give a lot of talks. PhD, or at least Michigan, in my program, we have to give talks to the department, have to give talks to the virologists, have to give talks at conferences. So yeah, give a lot of talks.
So everybody talks about, the thesis defense towards the end of the process, but what are some of the milestones, such as like the tests that are along the way?
Yeah, so basically, two milestones. The first one is the test I had last year. The second one is the first committee meeting for a grant I'm writing right now. So those are the two main milestones. And then other milestones, I would say, would be our departmental seminar once a year, where we have to present our project to the entire department for a half hour. And then, everyone asks you questions. So that's another big one. I would say getting a grant, it would be another milestone. I got on a training grant last year. So my funding is coming from the NIH, actually, rather than the University of Michigan. Another milestone would be getting another grant. um, And then I would say having publications. I'm in the process of writing a publication. I'm going to be on other publications. So those are, I would say, are the main milestones in the PhD process.
What is your specific research focused on at this point?
So my specific research focuses on noroviruses. So noroviruses are the leading cause of virus-induced diarrhea on the planet. And I am interested in understanding how noroviruses reprogram host metabolic pathways. And so your host metabolism is a series of connected, hundreds of pathways. And so our lab kind of has focused on individual pathways. And so we had a recent scientist who focused on glycolysis. I am focusing on glutamine breakdown. And so I am trying to understand the role that glutamine breakdown plays in norovirus replication. And so why I'm very interested in this project is because no other person has ever investigated this. All the data I produce, I am the first person to ever have done it. So, just trying to figure out things, roll with the punches when experiments work, when they don't work, trying to, everything's very fluid in a PhD. I'd love to tell you, hey, in 5 months, I'll be doing this, that. I can plan that far, but how the data will actually look in 5 months, I have no idea.
So your research, has it been a lot from a mentor as far as just somebody guiding along the way, or has it just been self-authenticated? I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the way it works is that I work in a lab, and the lab has a PI, primary investigator. And so the primary investigator will say, hey, I made my money and bread and butter and my name in this field off studying these types of projects. You can study anything that as long as it's under this umbrella. So my PI, Dr. Wobis, studies noroviruses. I can't come into her office and say, hey, I want to study HIV. She's going to say, I don't do that. I don't know anything about HIV. You can't do that. So I can do what I want, but it has to be within the framework of what the lab does. And so if we think about, actually learning experiments, a lot of it has been, me learning it by myself, me going to other higher level grad students and them taking the time to say, hey, Adam, this is how you do it, which is I've been very appreciative of. So it's kind of a mixture of both, it's learning from others. But one thing my PI told me, and I agree with, when you are in a PhD, you are the leader of your project. Your project is only going to go as far as you want it to go, and as much as you're able to work to push it along.
So where do you see your research or even yourself being in the next 10, 15 years?
Ooh, so I'm hoping to graduate in 2 to 3 more years. So after I graduate, I'd have full PhD, be an independent scientist. I'd love to, I think I'd like to take a step away from academia for a little bit. And I'd like to work for a big pharmaceutical company, Pfizer, Moderna, or even other startup companies, being involved in their viral research programs, understanding maybe vaccine development. But I don't want to necessarily step away from research because I really enjoy research, but I'd like to work up to, having my own lab someday. If my own lab if it's in an academic setting, maybe, or if it's in a pharmaceutical setting where, I am the primary investigator. I have a lab, and now I'm mentoring other junior level scientists.
Yes. So for one of the last questions I ask each and every one of my guests, in a world full of 7.8 million people, and especially with you learning how those things work, when did you realize the world was smaller than you originally thought?
I would say in undergrad, when I realized that, especially people in the Metro Detroit area, we all know, hey, my cousin knows you. Hey, my aunt knows you. Like, I think we're a lot more connected than we think. And I think that the more we make community with other people, we will continue to realize, hey, we're a lot closer than we truly think. One of my good friends I met here, her name is Jasmine. I didn't know that her family went to the same church we went to, or that we go to for years, and this is someone I have never met. I didn't know that she went to the same elementary school my dad went to. Like, I think that truly the more you get out there, whether it be in college, wherever you go, I think you'll realize that the world is a lot smaller, like you said, than we think. And, the more community you make, the more people you meet, you'll see that we are very connected, which is important to make good relationships and long lasting relationships because, everyone needs someone at some point.
As we see today, education is not just the cure to our physical ills, but our social ills as well. I want to thank all the scientists who have dedicated their lives to their lab work and research so we can make advancements in our communities. I want to specifically thank Adam Hafner, who has shown us that POC have made strides in science, technology, engineering, and math all around the country. Thank you so much to our listeners, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.